Working for you. A weekly talk radio program which highlights developments of national interest and the activities of your St. Kitts government. Join host Fitzroy Williams as he presents news, views, reports, and interviews about everything regarding the activities of the Team Unity government and the building of our communities and the development of St. Kitts. Tune in and call in to interact with your government and share your views regarding the upward forward development of your community and our beautiful Twin Island Federation. Working for you is weekly, every Wednesday live from 1:30 p.m. to 3 p.m. on ZIZ Radio, Win FM, and Sugar City FM with rebroadcast on participating stations. Working for you.
Good afternoon, and I welcome you to another edition of Working for You, the weekly radio program where you can keep informed about what is happening in the government, in St. Kitts and Nevis on a whole. We have just celebrated Easter, and I want to wish you Easter greetings, or to bring you Easter greetings, and to hope that the resurrection of Jesus truly means something to your life around this time. I am your host, Fitzroy Williams. Today I have with me two guests from the St. Christopher National Trust. I have with me the Executive Director, Miss Ryllis Percival, and I have with me Mr. Fitzroy Clarke, who is a Project Manager at the St. Christopher National Trust. Welcome to this program.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. The St. Christopher National Trust was formerly known as the St. Christopher Heritage Society. It is a national, non-governmental, voluntary organization established in 2009 by an act of the National Assembly, our federal parliament. Its mission is to preserve and promote the natural, historical, ecological, and cultural heritage of the island of St. Christopher. And of course, that is an important element in terms of the preservation of what we have, our heritage, and so on, which is so important. If we don't preserve that, then it simply means that generations to come would suffer if we do not preserve our heritage. And so I want to begin with the Executive Director, Miss Percival, and ask her to tell us a little bit, or to give us an idea of the trust of the St. Christopher National Trust. What are the objectives? Why do this National Trust exist?
Okay, as you mentioned earlier, thank you, and good afternoon, everyone. As you mentioned earlier, the objective is to promote, preserve, protect our heritage sites, buildings, our tangible, intangible, including also our sea-based environment. The National Trust was established in 2009 by Act of Parliament, and so we began that journey, 8-9 years ago. And now the National Trust is we are hosts at the old Treasury building in Basquiat, and we also own the museum. Now, the National Trust, in protecting and preserving our heritage, we were vested some sites by the government at that time. I think was 4 of them: the Mansion Estate, the Belmont Estate, the Cotton Ginnery in Keon, and the petroglyphs in Stoneforth. And a couple of years later, we were given the Charles Fort in Sandy Point, and the museum building where we house, it was also vested in us. And our goal really is to ensure that our heritage sites, our heritage on a whole, is protected, it is preserved and promoted. People need to know about it for now and the generations to come. We have a very small staff there. We're staffed by about 5 of us. The executive director, the director of visitor experience, and we have an office manager, and then we have museum attendants. But what we're doing now is that we're trying to get the young people involved in what goes on. So we have a couple interns there from the college. I think we have 3 of them. One is assigned to the museum, one is assigned to the gift shop, and one is assigned to the office. And so we trying in our best to keep up with our objectives. Now, our reason being here today, apart from promoting the trust and our objectives, is to speak specifically about a project that has been sponsored and been introduced to St. Kitts by the OAS, and it's called the National Registry Heritage Sites Registry Project, which is what Mr. Clarke would speak to more. He has been contracted by the trust to promote and this project, and so it's a very important project to St. Kitts, and so we want to expend a lot of time explaining to persons the project, what it means, what it entails, how they can benefit from it, and so forth.
Okay, now Miss Percival, before we go to Mr. Clarke to speak about this special OAS project that is being carried out in the OECS, I want to ask you in terms of, could you give us an idea of some of the projects or the past achievements of the St. Christopher National Trust? And you mentioned about the young people getting involved.
Yes.
in the trust. Why is it so important to have young people on board?
Well, if we do, let me step back, and I hope I don't get any lashes for that. But a lot of us believe that our history, the history of St. Kitts and the history of Nevis, is not properly taught in the school system. And so we, want to be sure that young people learn our history, and the National Trust, by extension, the museum and our documentation center, have tremendous amount of information available to young people. And we believe that if we start to encourage them to come, to be part of the trust and understand what is it we do and what is it we are trying to do in St. Kitts, that their interest will be piqued, and it would not only be a select few, but they will start to speak. People start, since we start doing that, we have persons who've come in and they want to volunteer, and we're encouraging that as well, that people can come, and young people can come and volunteer in the museum, in the documentation center. We encourage them to come and do their research there, as much, especially for social studies, because our history is not really St. Kitts Nevis base in the schools. It's more of the foreign, back to the Merindians and those kind of things. And so it is important, and we have also began to look at how we can introduce the technology to our museum that will also pique the curiosity or the interest of the young people to want to come in and learn more about. So sooner or later you'll be able to come up and go on the screens and do research and look it up, or even through our website, which we hopefully will be reintroducing, that will have those benefits. Now we have membership, and
Sure.
young people, we encourage, I think it's $20 a year, and they have free access to the museum, to the documentation center, and to events that we will have that they can come to for free. So we are encouraging the young people to come. But if they come and they want to see and they don't have the funds, we still welcome them. We won't turn back anybody because they don't have the monies to come into the museum or the doc center to do their research. Now, we've done a number of projects, and I want to speak to one specifically, which is the cotton ginnery, which is one of our vested sites, and that was cleaned up to a point where persons can go and get a good view of the equipment, look at the surroundings, learn the history. So we have done that. Now, it's difficult for us to do a lot of these things because they require resources that the trust don't have. And we are a begging organization. My board challenged me when I say that all the time, but we are a begging organization. We depend a lot on contributions from both internally and externally. We do work with other external agencies to promote projects in St. Kitts and Nevis, and the OS is one of them, of course. We presently doing one with the Jeff Small Grants Project, where we're sponsoring Ms. Dr. Whitaker to study the plants in St. Kitts, and the books are available at the trust to be purchased. So we've done, several projects that are benefiting. We've just recently, along with a team from Parks and Beaches, cleaned up the stone fort, the Charles Fort in Sandy Point, and that is also one of our visit sites. And eventually we have begun quiet discussions with UNESCO to make it also an attachment to Brimstone Hill as a World Heritage Site.
Now, of course, some of your objectives is not just to safeguard and so on monuments and buildings and historical sites, but I realize that some of your objectives are also to preserve traditions and customs, and also our music, visual, and performing arts.
And we do that with partnerships of the Ministry of Culture. We do partner with those ministries, the Ministry of Culture, the Ministry of Tourism, and as a trust we have to work along with several ministries, planning, environment, and those areas. But we work very closely with the Ministry of Culture, and I know that they are presently working on a culture policy, and we work with the Ministry of Tourism, and one of the projects we're looking at right now is the branding, if you can call it that, of the several sites around the island, and to make sure that they have identification and information. Another project we'll be working with tourism is have a kind of foot trail at the Stone Fort petroglyphs area. Most persons wouldn't want to take the long trek up into the petroglyph itself, so we want persons can stop and do a little exhibit with outside explanations. And so those are projects we work on. So it's about not only, like you say, about the heritage, the built heritage, but we also have the fauna, the flora, our sea-based heritage, protection of our coral reefs, and those are really big things for us that we're looking at. The protection of our there's some sites in St. Kitts that are identified as protected areas, and so we're also looking at how we can ensure that these sites remain protected, and other sites that have not been identified, to identify them. So those are things that are ongoing. It's a lot of work. People think that the National Trust just sit there and run the museum, but we don't. We do a lot of work in our protection and preservation of our history and our heritage in St. Kitts.
So you are a non-profit?
Yes, we are. We depend a lot on contributions, membership. We get a small grant from the government, a monthly subvention, but we depend a lot on visitors to the museum, persons who come. We depend on membership fees, and then we do projects through external agencies that we get funding for specific projects. And of course, those monies are for the project, and we might get a little administrative fee, for managing it. But our main funding comes from, donations. And I want to say this. When companies in St. Kitts gives us money, it is tax deductible. So it comes off their tax payment to the government. So don't be afraid to drop the $15,000 and the $20,000 checks. It comes out of their tax.
The 17% you pay?
Not the VAT, the corporate tax.
The corporate tax is okay. Now, sustainable development is what you have been speaking about. And of course, we have to ensure that we not only protect and conserve the present generation, but we have to think in terms of future generations. And human development, at the center of it all. One can have monuments and buildings and historical sites, and we can conserve and preserve them. But why? What is the rationale for doing this?
They say if you don't know where you come from, you wouldn't really know where you're going. And I think if we don't preserve our history, our real purpose might be lost if our future generations don't understand what the real struggle was in getting where we are. And it's important because one of the struggles the National Trust have is for having our citizenry understand the importance of preserving our heritage, our culture. It's critically important for us to preserve it. You don't want to have 20 years from now that we have a generation who don't remember simple things like, the Buckley's riot, the fight in Sandy Point at the Charles Fort, even up to Brimstone Hill, the struggles, the Bastille battle with the ships. People need to understand where we come from. And what we are challenged with right now is that people in their own selfish ways, and that might be a harsh word, that they think of themselves, that they don't consider that they too have to be playing a part in the protection of our history and our heritage. So persons don't need to go to mansion estate to buy the property, to put down something that is going to take it away, or to purchase Buckley's estate yard and to put down something that is not going to be, remind of what we have. And when you have to start to fight with developers, who is going to cause our future generations to not know their history, it's a challenge. It's something that we have to be constantly on top of every day, that this don't happen. Okay?
Now, I recognize that one of your objectives also is the preservation of our natural environment. And sometimes we do not think that that is very important. Let's face it. Whether it is the protection of our coral reefs or the protection of our rainforests, these things are very important for ecological balance and sustainability. Now, if we cut down our forest, I remember a few years ago,
and fill our ponds.
something struck me. I was in the Dominican Republic at the time. I was studying, and I went across to Haiti for a conference, which was about 3-4 days. And while flying into Haiti, when I look at the hills, they were all bare. And that came about as a result of the poverty in that country and people having to cut down the trees and so on for charcoal, for fuel. But it also dawned on me that while there was this deforestation, there wasn't reforestation or afforestation. And how much you were laying bare the environment to so many things that it could be susceptible to. For example, heavy rains and so on will bring landslides and things like that. Now we have natural forests, rainforests, and so on. And people just think maybe it is just there, but it serves a purpose.
It does.
Now, part of your responsibility as a national trust is to preserve the natural environment. How have the trust been doing this?
Well, the trust works with the ministries of environment and sustainable, and I know currently that there's a lot of discussion ongoing about how do we continue to protect the forest, our aquifer, and those areas that have been specifically protected. They are protected by law, and so we need to find ways to continue to ensure that they remain protected. And there have been other areas identified to come under those protected areas. And we've been looking in the last couple of months, there have been discussions, and I just came in on the back end of it, about what can be done to ensure the protection of these areas, natural areas. They have been looking to set up an agency specifically to deal with that. Where it will reside, we don't know, whether it's in the ministry or at the trust. The trust has the mandate legally to manage that, and the agency. But then you also have the challenge of the financial resources. How do we sustain it? And I know when we had the discussions, the trust said, well, the government pick up this environmental levy and we could just get a portion of it. Some people don't mind, those who would. And so the struggle is real in that regard. But if persons understand the importance of it, then the struggle would not be for resources. We find the money wherever it is to ensure that it is protected. How do we get people to go in there and don't do the damages that they can do? And so again, you need resources. You need people who are going to work there and make sure that it remains, protected. And so the discussions are ongoing right now. And hopefully we can come to some resolutions that will be good for all. The trust is part of the discussion along with the other ministries, and I know the government brought in persons externally to advise the different bodies on the best way, best practices out there. And so it's a real, it's on the front agenda for us and for those agencies, those government agencies that are responsible for those. You must realize that we, the trust, even though we have these mandates as objectives, we can't do it. We don't do it by ourselves. We really totally depend on a lot of other agencies, especially government agencies, planning, public works, environment, tourism and culture I mentioned earlier. Those are really our key partners, and we do have discussions with other non-government agencies who are supporters, the TDCs, the Hosfords, the Chamber, those agencies or those corporations that come on board when it is necessary to assist. But one of the challenges we have as the National Trust is being able to identify in times the key government agency responsible for a particular thing.
Okay.
So you might have the clock, and something needs to be done to the clock, the Berkeley Memorial, and persons will come and say, well, I'll give you 100,000 to fix the Berkeley Memorial. They'll give it to the trust, but we still have to find who really responsible for the Berkeley Memorial. And while we're sitting there wondering, somebody's fixing the Berkeley Memorial. So there's a lot of twining behaviors with the thing that it creates a real interesting environment when it comes to our thing. But it's not that we drop the ball. We do stay on top of it, but we want persons to understand that access to these areas is not laissez-faire. Like, don't take up a tent and just go down the Senator and have a little party in the corner,
right,
and then get up and leave with the trash. I mean, there's some areas that requires respect, because of its cultural heritage, and the museum, the National Trust building where we are housed, that's one of those. It's a very key iconic building, and persons treat it as a warehouse thoroughfare for selling trade, and advertise their business as the National Trust building landing on their Facebook page, and that's not good. It is the first iconic building our visitors see when they come into St. Kitts, and so we have to keep reminding persons, you can't just spread out. And not only that, it's a sensitive building. The building is near 150 years old,
and it has been restored, right?
No,
some of it
inside.
Some of it has been restored.
We've been, yes.
So it's a historical landmark, in St. Kitts.
It is.
Now, while you appear on this program, and you seem to be, it's a part of your awareness campaign in terms of what the National St. Christopher National Trust is. What are some other awareness campaigns that you have to make the public more aware of the importance of the trust, that it actually exists? I know you spoke a lot about the the interconnections between various organizations and ministries, whether local, regional, or international. But what is really being done aggressively to market the National Trust?
Well, we've just, since I've taken up the position as executive director, I have sat with the board. We are managed by a board, and I have laid out a strategic plan for the trust, which would include, like you say, the marketing of the trust. The trust has been very quiet. You say, where you work, the National Trust, where is that? Nobody knows us. I mean, if you say the museum, they'll get a little, hint about what it could be, but nobody really knew. And you're talking about the general man and woman on the street knew what the National Trust is about, what we do, why we exist. And so we've started, we have our Facebook, we pumped it up, we've done our Twitter, we've done Instagram, we've been, we have a weekly and bi-weekly radio program on WinFM that we use that, and we've, started to redo our website. We've started to talk a lot, go on a lot of shows and talk about that. Is the reason why we strategically hired our director of visit experience, and so that was one of our strategic moves as well, to as one of our marketing, to get the name of the trust out there. Okay. So that was a very strategic move for the National Trust.
So who are the people on your board? Who are they? Could you name them?
Yes, off the top of my head, I'll try.
Okay.
We have the president, Sneidman Warner. Our vice president is Bruno Guardian. Our honorary treasurer is Reverend Damian Hughes. I am the honorary secretary, and that's a position I've held for 3 years. So it was before I became the executive director.
Right.
We have representative from the Ministry of Culture, Marlene Phillips. We have Phillips, yes. We have from Tourism, Saju Engala. We have from Education, Sharon Harris. We have from Sustainable or Environment, I think, is a Damian. I'm not sure of the last name. He just joined. We have the Chamber.
Okay.
That is represented. Did I miss anybody?
What about the Brimstone Hill?
Yes, thank you.
Fortress.
Percival Hanley, yes.
Percival Hanley or Cameron Gill? It's Percival Hanley.
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
I think we have a board of 13 or 14 persons.
So you have government representatives from tourism,
yes,
education,
yes,
you mentioned, sustainable development.
Yes.
Okay.
We also operate with committees.
And culture, Ministry of Culture as well.
We have about 5 active committees, the Museum Committee, the Building and Sites Committee, the Environment Committee, the Marketing and PR Committee, Membership and Funding Committee. And these are active committees, and they do meet regularly. I can't remember all the names off the top of my head of the committee members right now.
Okay. Well, I think you said quite a bit. We have to go to Mr. Clarke now. And Mr. Clarke, you're the project manager basically, and you work on projects at the St. Christopher National Trust, and presently, as mentioned by the director, the executive director, there is a ongoing project right now, sponsored by the Organization of American States, and it is a pilot project or program throughout the OECS. And basically what it is that they want to identify heritage sites and to be able to create a national registry of heritage sites. Could you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yes, sure, Ken. The project, as you would have mentioned, is an OAS-sponsored organization of American States-sponsored project. The exact project is the National Registry of Heritage Places. It doesn't necessarily have to be a place, though. It can be a building, it can be a site, it can be an event, it can be any form of artifact. One of the key things to note, though, is that this must have some significance, some significant importance to our history and heritage. It must have craft a path somewhere. It also has to be at this point over 70 years in age to be considered that importance, that crafting that path for us.
Okay, and that's all?
No, that's not all. We, as the ED would have mentioned, we have a number of committees that we have to look to. We have an oversight committee, which when your site, your property comes in as a potential registrant or a potential site, the information is taken to the oversight committee for them to vet. The oversight committee is made up of archaeologists, architect, engineer, historian, lawyer, just for the fact basically to ensure that all the I's are dotted and all the T's are crossed. What the stage of the project that we are at presently is the sensitization stage, and that is the reason for me being here today on this program. We are just trying to bring the information out there to the general public and letting them know that the registry, the National Registry of Heritage Places, is up and running before we go out into the community to get the work actually started. So we are saying that we are here. You can make contact with us in the event that you think that you have something of significance within your community.
Okay, now what is the criteria for a heritage site? What criteria would you give for a heritage site? For something to be identified as a heritage site, what criteria do you use? Can I just bring this key and say it's a heritage something, for example?
Form that you have to complete, it's 9 pages. So that tells you that the amount of information you have to present to get that site considered is tremendous, because it's not any old thing. It has to pass, through a regiment of questions.
So, for example, what would some of these questions be? That what are you looking for before something can actually be said that this is a heritage site? For example, we have in Keys, we have a cave there in Keys, right? We know what a cave is,
Correct.
And is that a heritage site?
Like I would have mentioned, Williams, like I would have mentioned earlier, it had to have played a significant role in crafting our path and crafting our history. It can be 70 years or over 70 years old, right? But it has done nothing for the people of St. Kitts. It's just an old rock sitting there, but it could have been a rock that would have been the rock where the great grandmother of the present prime minister were telling the old stories, but the old stories of where they came from and what they used to do, and so it is of significance in crafting, in putting in place the making of a prime minister. But again, you would have a 9-page document that you really have to follow.
Yes.
However, of course, it is an Organization of American State project, and it is a pilot project here in the OECS presently. It would have happened in a number of places before, but not in the OECS. So the document, the original document, was somewhere around 30 pages long, but we had to tailor it to meet the needs of St. Kitts and what we are looking for and how it would, serve us.
Okay, so good. Now, in terms of the objective of the project, what is really the objective of this project? Because before you can have a project, okay, and the OAS will probably sponsor a project like this, the OAS must see certain objectives that this project has.
I think what caused us to become the pilot is that we had done an exercise of this nature several years ago, and so we have identified at that time 254 sites, places or things in St. Kitts that can be considered of significant value. However, even though the information was existing there, it was just there.
Sure.
The project comes with a software that you can have it online and persons can go and search it, and and so because we had done the initial groundwork, we were chosen amongst all the islands to be the pilot for this particular one that now comes with the software and so forth.
Okay.
But if I can add a little to that, Williams, one of the things you have to look at, and the ED, Percival made mention of it before. You talk about the objectives, you talk about the goals of the project, and clearly and simply, I just want to reiterate: if you don't know your history, you cannot craft your future. Plain and simple. If you don't know where you come from, you don't know where you're going. You'll be going nowhere.
And do you think that a lot of us are going nowhere?
I wouldn't say that. I'm saying that we are making a step in the right direction presently, which is throughout the region having this registry developed so we can capture our history and the significance of our history and what it is to us and what it will mean to our children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren.
Okay, so Executive Director, you said there were about 250 sites?
54.
254 sites that were identified as possible heritage sites?
Yes, we do have a list in our documentation center of sites that we had done. It was a project that was done a couple of years ago, and so we do have that information, and that will also be used as a guide for us in setting up the registry. But we really want the public to be the one who would be, making the registry. Creating the registry. We want the public to have because it's not only that they're going to identify, it knows, open their mind that this is an important site and we have now got to own it and protect it. So it's not only just about developing a registry and having the information there. We now want the public to become so a part of it that they know a part of the protection of these places that they themselves would have identified. Mr. Clarke speak about the going out into the communities,
yes.
And that part of the project is critical for the project, because in the community when you go, now you have people who are going to say, well, my grandmother used to sit here at nights and tell stories, and and this the house where we used to have community meetings, and and so they themselves now start to see the significance of this patch of land or this structure, or this was, like he said, a stone where we used to sit, and talk about or cook the train passing by, and so communities would now begin to own and become responsible for the preservation of our heritage.
So the story comes from the community.
We want that.
The community tells the story.
We want it to be like that.
And owns the story.
We want it to be like that.
Now, that brings me to your question. For example, how does the National Trust work along with, for example, the National Archives? And in terms of the gathering of your information for a heritage site, anybody can come and say anything. But how do you really go about testing that information for accuracy, probably for validity and reliability? How do you go about doing that?
That is why we have that oversight committee. The next stage after this, for this program, the next stage after this would be then going out into the communities. We are presently here promoting the project and basically telling the people that, hey, we will be coming to you. So you will see us out there in our branded t-shirts and stuff, collecting that information, passing out the pamphlets, talking to you, and you are telling us what is there. We will capture everything, all the information that you're giving us, and we go back into the office, we put the forms together. We can call you in later on for another meeting, which we get more information, because remember again, the form is 9 pages long with the information that we would want to get. After that form is filled, we then send it to the oversight committee. Remember, I would have mentioned that the oversight committee is made up of lawyer, architect, engineer, archaeologist, historian.
Yes.
So they would now start putting that relevant information together and tracing the roots, tracing the origin, tracing the history of that information to ascertain the accuracy of that information. That would be that committee's responsibility to ensure that the information received is as accurate as it can be and as truthful as it can be.
I think that the involvement of the community is a very positive thing. Because of course all history basically begins with an oral tradition.
It's a community project, Mr. Williams. I am from the village area, and I don't particularly know the intricate details of what goes on or what went on in Old Road and Sandy Point or Tabernacle for that region, Mansion. I would not know. We would have to go out and reach out to those people there. So that they can give us that information. I can give you some history on Limekeel Bay. A lot of people don't know that there is a bay called Limekeel Bay. A lot of people don't know that it was the #1 beach on the island for some time before we were able as a people to venture over to the other side of the island and go to the Frigate Bay and the Friars Bay. Again, remember that before the Dr. Kennedy Simmons Highway, the beaches on that side were only accessible via boat. I can't say how old you are, Williams, but I don't know if your family had a boat. My father had a boat, but no motto.
We never had a boat, not that I'm aware of.
But no motto, so my father wouldn't row all the way over to Cockleshell or Banana Bay, and so this is the type of history that would have to come out. The people in the community would have to bring out their own history, their family's history, their community's history.
Right, so
I want to add something just briefly. Mr. Clarke mentioned the oversight committee, but I want to be, add to that and say the final decision as to what gets on the registry is up to the board of directors. So even though the oversight committee will do their due diligence, they make final recommendations for it to be added to the registry by the board of directors of the National Trust. Now, we have the National Trust Act, but the National Trust Act is also guided by the NCEPA Act, and the NCEPA also have made provision for certain things pertaining to a project like this. So people may ask, what's in it first? Their benefits, and those benefits comes through provisions in acts that the government would have provided for. We are careful not to speak to them today, obviously, but we want to tell people that it's just not listing. It comes with, benefits on one side, but it comes with that we also now can begin to protect some of these places, things, based on what the NCEPA Act would have provided for.
Yes.
In it, in terms of how do we protect our culture, heritage. So we may say in the end, well, the building is pink, but you can't go paint it blue. Something like that. We're not saying that, but those are the things now we not start to manage. But one of the other things, I don't know if Platini had planned to talk about it, is that when something is registered, it becomes branded. We put a tag on it, and it will say this is a national heritage site. A specific brand,
yes,
logo on it, and so you have.
So people are aware.
Yes. And this project comes with a software. called Arches, that persons will be able to go on our website and look up information on what is in the registry and so forth. So it's not only that it gets on the registry, the information will be available to the public, and it information about it, the history about it, the pictures, all those things. So
once it is branded a National Heritage Site, then the National Trust has the responsibility for the upkeep and so on of that?
No. Not at all.
Okay, well, tell me.
Not at all. No, we don't take ownership. Matter of fact, we even try not to take all ownership of our property. We wish we could. We don't have those resources. It will be branded so that persons know, and then the benefits that comes with it will be bound to the owner. If it's a property that is not owned by anybody, then the maintenance of it, we can always go back into the communities and say, look, so
the community takes ownership and the community cares,
and we will just be given guidance as to what you can do, what you should do, what you shouldn't do, what can be. But in the end, it should be the protection should come back to a community. Some communities are responsible for it, and the trust will just make sure that it is preserved.
Okay, Platini, I think she was pointing to you to mention something. You may have got lost.
Well, no, I'm not lost. Well, it's the protection of the property, protection of the site. The onus is on the members of the community. I am from the village area. I'm sorry to use that example all the time, but it's a very easy example. I am from the village area, and if we was afforded the opportunity to have such a site, any site, the beach, the Limekiln Bay, I would take the onus on myself to ensure that the beach, the reef there is protected. As myself, as an individual, I can take a group of guys and clean the beach. I did that 2 weeks ago, with a group of young men from the area, the Masquerade and the Trafalgar South Stars football team, and we cleaned up the beach. These are the things that should happen within the other communities where these sites are. However, at this point, the Limekiln Bay is not on the registry, but it's ours. We are from there. It's in our backyard. So why not take ownership? Why not clean it? Why not preserve it? So it definitely goes to the ownership. Definitely goes to the community, and that is why we are going out to the community in the first instance to get that information from them, because it's really theirs. It's not ours. It doesn't belong to the St. Christopher National Trust at all.
Right. So a site becoming a heritage or national heritage site, then you will definitely have to have information. You gather the information from the community through stories told to the community. The gathering of that information then has to be processed. It goes to an oversight committee, which you said is made up of an archaeologist and a historian. And
I could probably rattle off the names of the committee.
Sure.
Off the top of my head, you have Cameron Gill, you have Mr. Brisbane, the architect, you have Denise Aline, you have, so Probin was on it, and what am I missing? There are 5 persons. Percival Handy, I think. Yes. He's the environment person. I may miss one or two, but that's the gist of it there.
Sure.
Yes, and they would, they have, and these committees, they work for free. They give up their time and their expertise to the trust, and we really appreciate it. And when we approach all of them and ask them to sit on this committee, every one of them willingly agreed to sit there and give of their expertise. and so they would have had to go through some training from
Yes.
when we was initially setting up the project. The project has been in St. Kitts for a year and a half maybe, because we would have had to do a lot of groundwork.
Which project? You mean the OS
Yes,
project?
the
It has
registry
been here this long?
Yes, because there was a lot of initial things that had to be done. It wasn't just, we're going to set up a registry.
And is this the first time the public is hearing of it?
It's no.
Okay.
No. No. We've done stuff on ZAZ before when
Okay.
the team were here from the OS and Coherit, that's the team that builds the software and train the staff. So they've been here 3-4 times. We've had workshops with relevant entities and agencies here, alerting them of the project. So it's not, but a lot of groundwork had to be done.
Sure.
We would have had to test it. We would have had to make sure it can work. We would have had to train persons. We would have had to put equipment in place. It took a while for everything to get there, and this is really the end of it. We're at the end of it.
Oh, you're at the end
Yes,
now.
we're now at the end of it, where we're doing the promotion of it, because we couldn't promote it before it's set up. So if somebody come to me and say, well, I want to register my property, we are ready. And so we're at the end of it. We're doing the promotion of it. We're going into the communities now. The project, we said, is in the OECS, but nothing has been done in the other countries no more than they know of it. They participated in the workshops in St. Kitts, but we are the one doing the work. When we finish, we're supposed to go to Barbados in May, Mr. Clarke, and tell the country how it should be done.
Also, we are the guinea pig in this, is that
we're
it?
doing the groundwork for it. And so we're setting it up. We've tested some sites. We've done it like it's the farms were long. We had to redo everything. The words that they would have used in the US, because we use a US based plan, we would have had to change them to our own culture.
British.
So it took a while for us to get there. And I must give credit to the former executive director, Mr. Manchester, who ran with this project, who went and seek it out, and him and the team at the National Trust did a lot of work to make sure that we got it. Because when you get in these projects funding, you have to struggle with the other islands to get it.
Yes.
So we had to prove that we can carry the project. We had the resources, we had the wherewithal, and Mr. Manchester and the team at the Trust did a tremendous job in convincing the OS that we are, equipped to run with a project like this, and it's a significant thing for us. And I'm telling you, as much as it might sound simple, our ambassador to the OS is on top of it. The governor is on top of it. The
Governor General,
yes,
he's passionate
he's
about
on top
those
of it.
things.
So I get calls all the time, making sure that we are on top of what we're supposed to be doing and make sure we are meeting our targets. So it's not a small thing. It's a real big thing for us, and I want the public to really, become excited about being, a part of it, and learning more about what it is and how it works and how to get it going. And anybody can come and register a project, a property, a thing, a place. Anybody can come, ask for the forms, fill them out. We have teams that will go out in the field with them to look at it, take the pictures, and do all the field work that it requires before we can even begin to look at it. So we're ready, like Mr. Clarke said, we're ready for it. And we really just want to get the public really excited about, being a part of this.
Okay. Now, in terms of the registry, of course, it would be online.
Yes.
And people would be able to access it online. And if they come up with a national heritage site, they'll get all the information that is there about this site.
Yes.
Which would be complete.
Yes.
So it's a completed work of all the national heritage sites, the history behind the sites, as you said, the stories and all of that sort of thing, which I basically think is a very, very good thing. Do you have anything else to say about it, Mr. Clarke? Because you're the project manager.
Yes.
So basically, you have an intimate knowledge of the project.
Well,
Are there any challenges, for example, that you have encountered, difficulties, roadblocks in working on this project?
I think roadblocks is a very strong term. However, like in any area of life, we have stumbling blocks, but they are only stumbling blocks.
Yeah.
We get up and we move again.
Roadblocks, so you move the blocks off the road and you're gone again.
They are not that big. They are not that big. But working with people, Williams, you understand that we are in collaboration with Ministry of Tourism, Ministry of Culture, Sustainable Development, and all those finance, all those other entities, government entities. And very often we can't just get up and do anything. We have to make sure that we are doing it right. And I recognize that you seem very surprised that the project has been around for so long. And the reason why it wasn't dominating the airways is because, like I said earlier, all the I's had to be dotted and all the T's had to be crossed. And so the team at the Trust were really working hard on getting all of that done. You really don't want to go out to the public and after a few questions from the general public, you have to put the project on pause and go and revisit too many things. So we would have done, we at the Trust would have done our due diligence and to ensure that when this comes on stream, it is done properly. The difficulty is the time frame, because you are working with a lot of different entities and they have a lot of other different things that they have to do as well. It's just the nature of how life is.
Right.
And so it really isn't a difficulty, so to speak.
Okay.
It's just the nature of things. We just need to know how to make the adjustment around these mishaps.
Okay.
Yeah, that's it. It's just the time frame, working with a lot of different people, a lot of different entities who have other goals. Because if finance have to present, let's say, the budget, I think they would put more resources into doing that than to deal with the trust issue at this time. So Trust, I'm sorry, you would have to wait for 2 days, and we can work on this project 2 days later. Whereas it puts us back. Tourism might not be available 2 days later. You understand? So just that's the dynamics. But the ED is very good at getting the key players to the table. And so we have been going pretty well. So the roadblocks, no roadblocks.
Okay, with a project like this, especially given the fact that within the OECS, most of the countries within the OECS, their economies are now heavily reliant on tourism. And although we have the sand and the sea and the sun, and some people say the other S, tourism, we are moving into more diversified forms of tourism. Ecotourism is one of them, and heritage tourism is another. And I think that this project can have very, very good implications for heritage tourism within the OECS. What do you think?
I agree. And one of the things, because of where I work, we find people come to St. Kitts and they are not normally interested in the sun, the sand, and the sea, and whatever the other S is.
In the history and the heritage. And the other S's, of course. You have to...
But they are interested in our history. And we get persons passing through the Trust and through the museum, and we get a lot of questions about our history. and persons want to know about St. Kitts, not the sun, because they can get that anywhere. You know, I had a guest the other day, and she came and she said, you know, they didn't tell me there's so much to see. So I went on the beach at 3 o'clock. She now wants to learn the history. And you know, then she asked me, what can I do in St. Martin, because it was going to. I said, sun and sea. They don't have any history like we do. But there you go with it. We need to begin to promote St. Kitts as a very interesting place, and we have a rich history, and persons want to be able to stop at this point and say, well, what is this about? And the history is there. You know, you stop at Black Rocks, and what is it about? The history is there. You stop at Keynes' Pasture, and the history is there. And you make a stop by the cave in Keon, and the history is there. And we need to start to see St. Kitts as a very rich historical place where visitors can come and get value for their visit. Not just about the cedar sand and the you know, but history. And our culture is promoted, and I remember I had a guest coming.
And our ecology as well, because that is one of your objectives,
and
preserve the natural environment.
We do, and one of our sites is really intended to promote the fauna of St. Kitts, to be like a butterfly farm, and you can stop and, you know, learn about the different species. And we have a team here that was studying that the other day, and you know, and so it's the challenge, not only for the registry but for National Trust, is resources. We get a lot of people who wants to come here and do work for us and work with us, but at the end of the day, sometimes you have the information and then you don't have the wherewithal to put it out there. I have a gentleman who keeps sending me, he's doing research on forts, and he sends me all the information, and so these are information that exists. But yes, it's our history, and we need to protect it, preserve it, promote it, and tell people about it.
Right. But the National Trust also needs support.
Yes, lots of money. We need lots of money.
So you need to reach out more into the community, or as people become aware of the work that is being done by the National Trust. Then they will be in a better position to contribute. Because if they see it as really the protection and conservation of their history, the protection of their communities, the keeping alive of their stories, and the preservation of that, then I think that they would be more willing to contribute. Okay, I am going to go to the phone lines. And basically I want it to be a guided discussion from those who are listening. We are talking about the conservation and the preservation of our heritage. And I want you to contribute in telling us how you think our heritage and our culture can be preserved. What is your idea of a heritage site? Do you know of any sites that you think should be dedicated heritage sites? And how important is having a national registry of heritage sites? The numbers to call are 465-2555. That's the local number. And the overseas number is 1-718-577-2916. That is the local number is 465-2555. And the overseas number is 1-718-577-2916. We welcome your calls. Working for you. Good afternoon.
Working for me?
Yes, we are working for you.
Okay, me working for you too.
Okay.
Good afternoon, Mr. Williams and company.
Good afternoon, sir.
Yeah. Now, question: what is the criteria for a place to be called a heritage site? Because I've known a place up in Alavis Mountain by the name of Lawyer Stephen Cave. I don't know if you all have that registered in the archives. And it is of some great significance Because as a little boy, I used to go up there with the manager on the estate of Buckley's. And he always tell us that this is Lawyer Stephen Cave. Lawyer Stephen was a man from England. And I don't know what title he held in the country of St. Kitts. Why that cave, why he built that cave up there, and why that is so significant to the those who know about it. So I would like to know what is the criteria for that to be called a heritage site. And also, there is a place in Camps Estate where the long chimney is. I don't know if you all have that registered, but I think that should be a heritage site also. So I will listen off the air for your answer. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much.
Yes.
Working for you, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I've heard some of your program, not all of it.
Sure.
And so I'd just like to add a few comments. I heard the question being raised whether or not the caves in Keys represent a heritage site. Actually, it is not a natural thing. The caves in Keys were an excavation. It was really an industrial site created by the forebears of the Stevens family in Keys. And back at the turn of the century, the gentleman, as a way of expanding his opportunities for work, realized that he can cut the stone, he can excavate the stone there. And so what you see there is the result of hand, no kind of mechanical tools, of handwork, of cutting stone and making stone for building all sorts of buildings that have gone up around St. Kitts. So that is the story of the the caves in Keys. As a matter of fact, I know someone who is considering doing some exploration and writing a history on it. And so I will let that person, when the time comes, do their own publicity on it. On a larger issue of the heritage project, whenever we travel to countries abroad, large metropolitan places, London, New York, we will notice that we see there are sometimes plaques on buildings or locations. In London, they are blue. In New York, I think they are brown. And that is the type of notation you will see that are given to places on St. Kitts, which will achieve the heritage notation. I think the executive director there might have forgotten one of the persons involved as part of that specialists. Right now, I should give credit that Sir Probin Innes was the historian on the advisory committee, and so I'd like to place on record our great appreciation for Sir Probin's contribution in the short period of time that he served on that committee. And we will be looking for someone with history in their background to join the National Trust in replacing Sir Probin. It's very difficult to fit into his shoes, one knows, but we would need a historian as part of the advisory committee in determining what sites meet the criteria for being listed on the National Register.
Okay. Thank you.
I just want to thank my president, Mr. Warner, for chipping in there and clearing up some stuff for us, and I appreciate that.
Somebody. Good afternoon. Working for you.
Yeah, good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
Two things. What are we doing to preserve our beaches? That's one, because every beach should be a heritage site. The second thing is, when tourists come here, they go to the beaches, you see them picking up the shells, and they're leaving with them. This is not right. In other countries, I go Antigua and I see them on the airport taking their shells. They don't even let them leave the country. In fact, in St. John, you can't even take up a shell off the beach. And that's the only way we can preserve what we have. And we got to get up and start doing these things to preserve our beaches, because if they continue leaving with the shells, what else going to be left? Thank you.
Hello, good afternoon.
Working for you, good afternoon.
Good afternoon. To the guests that are there.
Yes. Good afternoon.
Yes, you mentioned identified about 254 sites. One of my passion, and there is a old sugar ruins, the lone one of probably 3 on the southeastern peninsula. It's partially in ruins, but I hope that sugar windmill would have made the list. Why I say so? Because it's the lone one and it is on the southeast peninsula. I would have want my children to know, my grandchildren to know, that even in this arid land over here on the southeast peninsula, sugarcane was once harvested, grown, thrived, and harvested. And so I hope that would make the list. And I always agitated about protecting it. And I hope it's not on private lands. Just have that little area there, space there, with some, some fauna, some flower, just as a little garden, just to let our children and grandchildren know, yes, sugarcane was once grown over here on the southeast peninsula. As we know, the Dr. Kennedy Simmons Highway, and this portion of the island is like, quote unquote, the future to St. Kitts in terms of development. I mean, when over here is developed, it's going to make Cricket Bay look like a walk in the park, so to speak. So we have to at least protect the lone heritage site on this end. Let me hear what you have to say about it. I hope it would make the list, and so we can preserve this part of the history of this part of the island. And I'm reading a book which spoke about the Maroon Quarters. So there is some significant history to the southeastern part of our island, and so yes, we need to preserve this lone sugar mill that is in ruins. We hope we can restore it to its former glory also. Thanks.
Working for you, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I wish to draw something to the lady who is there. On the building where she works, the old treasury, there is a plaque that marks Governor St. Johnston, S-T-O-N. I live in the village of St. Johnston, but I realize that the yellow pages and government offices and everybody is now saying St. Johnson, leaving off the T. I would like her to draw it to their attention at the word St. Johnston. The village was named after the Governor St. Johnston.
Okay.
And the Methodist Church is St. Johnston Methodist Church. The village is St. Johnston. I went to a place where I put the T, and the government person take out the T. I tell them the T is supposed to be in. Go and look to the back of the old treasury. She can go and see it is Governor of St. Johnston, not St. Johnson. And I would like to see a remedy about that. Thank you.
St. Johnston, I think she's correct. It is not Johnston, it is Johnston. Working for you, good afternoon.
Even as I got cut off earlier, I was trying to make a contribution.
Sure, go right ahead.
Yes. I was referring to the lone sugar mill on the southeast peninsula. And I would hope that was one of the 254 sites that you folks would have identified. And so we would able to at least preserve it. Bearing in mind, this area of the island is being fast developed. It is somewhat, the progress to the future. And so modern development is taking place over on this side, real rapid. And we hope that we can look at it, preserve it, restore it to its former glory, and have it earmarked for posterity in terms of letting our children and our grandchildren know that, yes, sugarcane was once grown out here on the southeast peninsula, even though it's so arid out here today. We know we would be able to leave that part of history for our children.
Sure.
I mean, inheritance. Thanks.
Working for you, good afternoon.
Hello.
Hello.
Yes, sir.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, sir.
Yeah, with all these sites that you are, these heritage sites, where you get funds from to keep them going, to repair them and so forth.
Okay.
It's all well to say you have a site like the guy that's talking about the one over Peninsula, because I see it all the time, and when I first saw it and seen it after about almost 2 or 3 years, it seems it's deteriorating. So if you can tell me and the public, where do you get funds from to keep those things going? Thank you.
Okay,
Question.
let me answer the last one first. We do fund requests do grants from external agencies, and right now we are trying to get some funds through a fund called the Ambassadorial Fund in Barbados to do further work on the cotton ginnery in Cairn. We have to write projects when we want to do restoration work for sites. We have to get persons to write grant applications and then send them off and hope we become successful. So a lot of the funds we get are through grants and from funding agencies internationally. I agree with you about the St. Johnston thing. I've always
It's
said
Johnston.
Sorry, before you go forward, on the last
the
question,
grant, yes.
Where do we get the funding from to maintain all these sites? One of the things I would like to do is to encourage that caller to become a member of the trust. And as we would have mentioned earlier, the membership dues, one of the things that take care of things like this. It's a minimal fee. It's $50 for membership fee, $50 for the entire year. So if that caller is still listening, we would like to encourage you and everyone else to become a member.
Sure.
There are also different plans that you can get your membership for 5 years, 10 years, long-term, a lifetime member as well. But feel free, that caller and any other individual out there listening, to come into the office and fill out a membership form and become a member of the St. Christopher National Trust. You can go ahead.
Thank you for that, because it's my mantra. Wherever I go, as a matter of fact, I have a standing order in office. Anybody comes in, they do not leave without completing a membership form. And so we have some serious targets to get our membership going, and that is critical. It's a small drop, and it may not be able to do restoration work, but it can pay for some maintenance work, that we can go in and clean up the area. But what we do also, we form partnerships. So you find maybe that site over at the Southeast Peninsula, we will probably go and form partnership with Christopher Harbour and said, well, can you maintain the site for us? Can you assist us in the renovation work? They may have the engineers there, or architect, or whomever, builders that can do the restoration. So we do a lot of partnerships with entities in St. Kitts who can assist us in maintaining, preserving our heritage, and they do work with us, especially Christopher Harbour. They do a lot of archaeological digging over there, so they find our history over there, and we get to share it, with the visitors. We keep a log of what they find, and they display it, and so our history in that event is displayed. The gentleman who called first about the mountain, Olive's Mountain, and the Camps Estate, he in and of himself can come and make the application for this to be considered a heritage site, both areas. And once we do the due diligence and go through the process, once it makes the map, then it will be listed on the registry. So we don't want person to say, well, you should, but they can come in and fill out the forms and work, meet the team there and do what is necessary, for us to get the site considered. I don't know if the ruin at the SCP Southeast Peninsula makes the 254 list. I mean, I have the list on my desk, but
you do.
I can't say for sure. If it's there, I can. When I go back, of course, I'll look and see.
Sure.
Yeah.
I would have liked to hear what some of those 254. sites are.
Yes, it'll be interesting for you to see them. Yes.
Yeah. Somebody called as well and said that they think that every beach
Yes.
should be a heritage site. Do you agree with that?
We already have so many issues with the beaches. Right now, we have persons who are calling into the National Trust and indicating that we have blockage to beaches and so forth. Our beaches are not, they are our heritage. We the locals, by
Must
law,
have access.
by law, have access to the beaches. And yes, we want persons to know the history behind the beach. Each beach have a name, I suspect, because it comes with a history with it. And so you want that history to be maintained, and we don't want persons to go and erode the history. And yes, the collecting of stuff from beaches, I'm not sure if the NCPA Act speaks to it or the Environmental Act speaks to it. I will have to go and look particularly, especially for that area in those acts to see what they say about it. But I'm certain, knowing what those acts were for, that they have these, the provisions in there for the protection of what can and can't be.
Right.
The enforcement of it is where the issues are. The enforcement of some of these provisions in the acts are where the issues are for us in the National Trust and for other government agencies who have responsibilities in these areas.
Okay. Now, Ms. Clarke, we are basically out of time, and we have to be wrapping up. So I'm going to ask you to basically to give your closing statement.
Okay.
Mr. Clarke.
Sure, no problem. I want to reiterate to the general public that we are here, St. Christopher National Trust, and we are starting and developing the National Registry of Heritage Places. We encourage you to come in and visit us at the Old National Museum, which is on the Bay Road, Bastia, in what most people would call the Old Treasury Building, the National Museum. You can also contact us at 465-5584. That's 465-5584. And we will be happy to take your queries, your questions, and sit with you and have the information registered.
That's it?
Yes.
Ms. Percival?
Well, I definitely want to say thanks for the opportunity to be here. I always enjoy talking about the trust and what we do. And, I am excited about what we do at the National Trust and what our role is in terms of the environment, the protection, the heritage. I'm a great advocate for it. I've been serving the trust in a voluntary capacity for over 3 years, and I've always been excited to be a part of it. And from being on the board, I learned so much about the trust and what we do and what we are trying to accomplish. And so I was very excited also for the opportunity to sit in the executive director position when it became available. Now I want to encourage the public to get to know more about the registry. Come into our offices or call us, and if you're interested, the information is available for you. Like we said, also we'll be going out into the communities. You'll be hearing a lot more from Fitzroy, Clarke and his team about the community, how it will work, what it entails. And I think the different community groups, they'll be hearing from us, because we'll be using them as our vehicle to enter into the communities and to get participation. And so I want to put them on notice that we're coming, and we hope that we can create the excitement for the registry and for the protection of our heritage sites in St. Kitts through this project. I want to again encourage persons to be a part of the National Trust by becoming a member, by becoming a volunteer, by becoming sitting on committees. And one of the things I get asked all the time, what are the benefits of being a member? What do I get for my $50? And the one thing I tell them is to become an advocate for our heritage, our history. That alone should give you the impetus to come and say, I want to be a part of it. The other small benefits of getting a newsletter, being kept up to date, getting discounts, those things are minute. But being able to become an advocate, being a part of it and say, well, I'm a member and I don't like what you're doing to my beach, or I don't like what you're doing to this site or that site, have a voice. And so that for me is important for becoming a member.
Sure.
And please come join us, pay the $50 and bring your friends or more. And we take donations of all kinds, and of all amounts. And like I said, it's tax. You get a tax break if you're a corporation, and we do get a lot of support from our corporate community, and we're grateful for that. So again, I want to thank you for having us here. I appreciate the opportunity. I want to thank my team at the National Trust and the board, who gives the unwavering support to the staff there and for this project, and those persons in the background who support us, our committees, especially the oversight committee. We're grateful for all that they do to ensure that the National Trust achieve our goals and objectives.
Okay, well, I want to thank you for being here and for such an important discussion. The preservation, the conservation, the fostering of a deeper understanding and appreciation for our St. Kitts heritage. Preserving our music, our visual and performing arts, our monuments, our buildings, our historic sites, our natural environment, our traditions and customs. The work that you're doing is extremely important. And the linkages that you are making and the awareness that you are developing in the communities is extremely important to our sustainable development and our human development. And so I want to thank you, Mr. Clarke, for sharing with us about the National Registry of Heritage Sites, sponsored by the OS, which is so important, having that national registry. And you mentioned that St. Kitts is leading the way in terms of this, which is really admirable. And Ms. Percival, thank you so much for educating us about the important work that the St. Christopher National Trust is doing. I was made to understand it was formerly called the St. Christopher Heritage Society, right? The St. Kitts Heritage Society. Now it's the St. Christopher National Trust. I wanted to ask what was responsible for the change in name, but I will leave that for another time. So you have been listening to Working for You. I want to thank all of our callers and those who listened to today's program, those of you who shared and contributed to this discussion in terms of the preservation and the conservation of our heritage. I am Fitzroy Williams, your host of this program. We would see you next week.
Working for You. A weekly talk radio program which highlights developments of national interest and the activities of your St. Kitts Nevis government. Join host Fitzroy Williams as he presents news, views, reports, and interviews about everything regarding the activities of the Team Unity government and the building of our communities and the development of St. Kitts Nevis. Tune in and call in to interact with your government and share your views regarding the upward forward development of your community and our beautiful Twin Island Federation. Working for You is weekly, every Wednesday live from 1:30 p.m. to 3 p.m. on ZIZ Radio, Win FM, and Sugar City FM with rebroadcast on participating stations. Working for You.